Okay, so when I was 19, I had a major episode from my schizophrenia, and one of the um, so, symptoms, or a number of the symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia, is delusions of grandeur and hallucinations. And throughout my teenage years, I slowly started slipping away into that. It started off with simple scenarios like, the paranoia thinking my girlfriend was cheating on me or my best friend was stabbing me in the back or things like that. But then after a while, it slowly started to evolve into that I thought there were conspiracies against me, and everyone in my life was working in this grand conspiracy to like kill me, and just all these people were trying to poison my food and all these things I was thinking. And then once it got even worse, I started to think that, okay, well, if all these people are against me and they're, working together to like try to end my life, I must be like this important person or something. So that's when all of the delusions of grandeur started coming into play, and I thought like I was Jesus, or I thought I was like, Neo from the Matrix, and I thought I can control the universe like through, number combinations and number codes. And so there was a point in my life when I thought, okay, well, if all these terrible things are happening to me, and I'm not a violent person by nature, or I'm not like a, you know, negative person by nature, how can I fight back at all of these evil forces that are trying to end my life? Was that, so I started relating everything that was happening to me to like mathematics and like um, religion or philosophy, whatever, because my logical thought process started to decay, and my mind would start to come up with these alternate explanations of why all these things were happening to me. I just wanted to make them stop. So, like, what I did was I started like writing down numbers and trying to figure out the code behind the world so I can control it into just like leaving me alone and like, not like torturing me all the time. So as I got more into like these codes and these numbers, I secluded myself to my apartment in my room for like 2 weeks. And like I didn't sleep. I was awake for like 2 weeks, and I was just writing down numbers like on this chart. And I was trying to decode the universe and figure out like the world. And then so once I thought I had figured it out, like the patterns behind time, I thought I could control time, and I thought I could control everything around me. So, once I started showing these numbers and this theory of three, I call it the theory of three because it has a lot to do with the number three, and things happen in threes, and everything's rooted in three. That was my thinking when I was insane. Um, so that once I started showing these things to people and showing my numbers to people, strange coincidences like started happening to me. And then that's when I thought that I could control the world. And, I started doing things like, I thought I was invincible, and it made me think I was invincible. So at that point, money had no value to me anymore because I thought that I was invincible and I can control the world. And my main thing that I wanted to do was just make the world a better place and like, end like suffering and end my own suffering, like pretty much. And so I started running every red light and stop sign because I thought I was invincible and I thought nothing could kill me. And I was just on this mission to like save the world, which comes along with the Jesus, delusion, and the Neo from the Matrix delusion. I was a combination of those two things that I thought I was. And, so there was a period of like a few weeks to a month where I was running every red light and stop sign, and I took all my money out of my bank account, and which wasn't much because I was pretty poor back then. But I took all my money out of my bank account and I just started giving it away to people. And like a common thing that I would do around that period of my life was I would have like $100, and I would write on an index card like just a bunch of numbers of like somebody that I knew and what their particular number combination would be according to my theory of three, and maybe like a something related to music, like a CD or an album that I thought they would enjoy. And I would drive to that person's house, leave my car in the middle of the road in oncoming traffic, and traffic was driving by, I would just get out of my car in the middle of the road, and then I would, run to the, okay, and I would get out of my car in the middle of the road, I would run to their house while cars were like swerving out of the way in the middle of the road of my car. I'd walk up to their doorstep, and I would say something like, I would hand them the index card full of numbers, and $100 and like an album and of some sort of musical artist or something, and say, listen, this is the number combination that you need to figure out your next stage in life, and I'm going to save the world, and I'm going to kill myself to save the world. So you just remember this. And then I would just run off, get in my car, and then just continue to run every red light and stop sign, and then find the next person from my life and do the same thing. And I did this to a lot of people that were parts of my life growing up. And, you know, after a while, this delusion had reached a level of paranoia where I thought that, okay, well, if I'm controlling all these codes and controlling the universe, all of a sudden the paranoia started setting in, like there were evil spirits or some sort of evil force trying to, like, working to kill me. So I started getting paranoid, and you know, but I still thought I could control everything. And well, really, side note, funny story. One of the funny things I did when I was thinking I was controlling the world was, one of my stops was, I went to fast food. I went to McDonald's, and I went to the drive-thru, and I ordered just one cheeseburger. And then when I ordered that cheeseburger, the guy's like, okay, well, you know, $1, whatever it was back then in the 90s, and drive-thru. So I drive through, and the guy's, okay, here's your cheeseburger. And then I handed him $100. And then I started to drive away because I was, like, you know, giving him his code in the theory of three and giving him his thing or whatever to move him on his next path. So I gave him the $100. I started driving away. The fast food worker comes halfway out the window. He's like, hey, wait, don't you want your change? And I said, nah, man, you keep it. And he's like, what are you, crazy or something? I said, nah, man, I just love McDonald's cheeseburgers. And I was like, just like drove away, tires screeching in the parking lot, you know. And, you know, another thing that I did, I remember I was driving, I was going like, I want to say like 80 miles an hour in like a 20, 40 mile an hour zone. Cop pulls me over. And when the cop pulls me over, he gets out of his car. When he gets out of his car, he gets out of his car. I take my shirt off, and like I get out of my car, and I start walking towards like the car, and the cop like gets get back in your car, like, you know, pulls his gun. He's like, get back in your car, you know. And I'm like, whoa, you know. And then like he goes, get back in, and he's asking me, I have all these questions. Like, you know, you were doing like 80 and a 40, whatever he said. I forget. It's kind of hazy because it was 20 years ago. But the cop said something along the lines of like, you know, do you have any drugs or alcohol on you? And I said, no, you know, I just have dirty laundry, because I was going to Eric's house, my friend Eric, to do my laundry and shower in his pool. And I was like, nah, man, you're not going to find any drugs. You'll just find a bunch of dirty laundry. You know, my underwear might have some skid marks in it. You know, you can enter at your own risk if you want to search there for drugs, but you won't find any drugs because I'm actually on my way to my drug dealer's house to get my drugs. I haven't gotten them yet. And the cop was like looking at me. He was like kind of thrown off a little bit, like what the is this guy like doing? And like in my logic, I thought that I was kind of like throwing him off mentally to move him on his next path in the theory of three. Whatever crazy number combinations are going on in my mind. Then he called for backup, and the other cop comes, and then they're asking me all these questions, and then I'm telling them like, oh, you guys listen to Pink Floyd? You know, and I'm just asking, I just start talking to them about music, and they're like trying to remain on like, you know, the focus of like, okay, well, what's wrong with this guy? We need to give him a ticket or whatever they were going to do to me, arrest me, whatever. And then I said, yeah, you know, it's my mission in life to make a liquid form of THC and acid so everybody can listen to Pink Floyd and live in harmony. I said something like crazy to them, something like that. And they were just like, okay, well, we're going to frisk you now, so put your hands on the hood of the car. And so for some reason, I don't know why I did this. I thought it was another theory of three combination. I was throwing them off. I put my fists in the air like this, and then I punched like the cop car with both of my hands, like for them to like search me. And they just kind of like jerked for a second. They looked at me, and then I looked at them, and I go, and I smiled. And then like they frisked me, and like they found nothing, because I said, you know, well, I'm actually on my way to my drug dealer's house to get my drugs. So, you know, like, you're not going to find anything. If you want to follow me there, we can get some drugs there, but I'm not there yet. So, and they just kind of thought it was funny. And so then they said, okay, well, just, you know, just try to be careful. And they just kind of laughed it off. And they didn't even give me a ticket. They just said, be careful and just, and they let me on my way. And then that was it. I mean, that interaction may not have even existed. Like, I was so far gone at that time, I may have hallucinated the whole thing. I'm not really sure. But anyway, before I trail off, I started doing things like this with my interactions with most people. And then after a while, when I thought I was controlling the universe, a level of paranoia set in. And I thought that there were evil, like spirits and evil number combinations trying to kill me. So it got to a point where I was trying to outrun them. And when I was trying to outrun them, I was, still driving 80 miles an hour, running every red light and stop sign. But every time I came to an intersection, a car would stop, pull up and stop right in front of me. And then I would screech on my brakes. I'm like, wait a second, this isn't right. I'm not controlling the universe anymore. There's some sort of evil force trying to stop me. So then that continued. Every red light that I went to, a car right in front of me. Every intersection, car right in front of me. And then it was at that point when I thought, okay, well, maybe the evil forces or evil spirits that are trying to stop my number code combinations from controlling the world, maybe they're not out there trying to get me. Maybe they're inside my body. So then I started thinking that these evil spirits were inside my body trying to control me into killing myself. But for some reason, since I had these delusions of grandeur and thinking that I was a godly figure, I thought that I would survive, no matter what I did. So I thought, okay, well, I have to fool these evil forces into thinking that I'm dead. So that's when I was in my car and, I'm going to do something. I'm going to commit an act of faith. I'm going to do something that no human can do, and I'm going to survive. I'm going to cross over into a parallel universe, and this act of faith where a normal human would die, I would cross over into a parallel universe and then save the world. And that's what I honestly thought in my head when I got into my car accident. So I'm in my car, this revelation comes into my head, and then I said, okay, well, this is it. I got to do it. So I put my foot down on the gas pedal and I put it to the floor, and I was so afraid and so full of adrenaline that my foot was shaking like this on the gas pedal. But for some reason I was still going 100 and going over 100, nothing was stopping me. And then I hopped onto the highway, and when I hopped onto the highway, it seemed like I was on the wrong side of the road. And I didn't realize this until 20 years later or 10 years later, whatever it was, that I actually wasn't on the wrong side of the road. But at the time, I was hallucinating that I was on the wrong side of the road. And front headlights were just coming at me like this. And they were moving out of my way as I'm going 100 miles an hour. And I'm like, okay, well, these evil forces are trying to stop me. And I'm just going through them. So I thought, okay, well, I have to die now. I have to cross over into this parallel universe. So I started hitting road signs, trying to crash, but I was just going so fast that the road signs just disintegrated under my front bumper. They were just boom, boom, and they were just folding like that. So then I'm on back onto the road, and I'm driving, and then as I'm driving, I see this one car coming straight at me, and for some reason it wasn't moving. I was like, this is it, this is the one. And I saw the front headlights coming closer and closer to me, and as it's doing, I'm shaking and I'm screaming. I'm like, this is it, this is it. And then at that point, I screamed, I said, this is it, this is it. And then I felt a big bang, and when I felt that big bang, I just shut my eyes really quick, and the next thing I can remember was just crumpling up into a ball, and I feel like I might have been on the floor of my car by the gas pedal in this ball, but like I said, I was hallucinating so bad. I mean, I really don't know what really happened. But I remember crumpling up into a ball and feeling a bunch of turbulent crashes, boom, 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 boom. And then all of a sudden the crashes stopped. And then I remember I opened my door and I'm in the woods somewhere in the woods. And I didn't realize this till years later that I took something like a 20-foot drop or some drop into the median into these trees, because I hit a car, and then I didn't apply my brakes the entire time. That was actually what it said in the police report, that I didn't apply my brakes. I just kept going and just flew. The truck was airborne, just flew into trees. But I remember after the accident had finished and when the crashes stopped, I got out of my car, and oh yeah, by the way, I was naked, because let me backtrack a little bit. When I thought that the evil forces were like trying to kill me, I had to fool them into thinking that I was dead. So right before I hopped onto the highway, I stopped my car and I took all my clothes off. And I ripped out my center console with my one hand, and all the in my car, just ripped it out, threw off my clothes, threw them into the woods, and left a bunch of what I thought the evil forces would perceive as my remains. And maybe, okay, Joe died right there, so we'll leave him alone. So I was naked, and then like everything was out of my car. And then what prompted me to hop onto the highway was that, I didn't fool them. They still knew that I was alive, and they were trying to stop me and trying to kill me. So that's when I hopped onto the highway and knew I had to, hit that car and get into the accident and cross over into a parallel universe. But anyway, back to when I was in the woods and I got out of my car. I just remember running across the highway, and like I was running across the highway, and these cars were like moving out of my way, and like people were screeching everywhere. I don't even really. It's kind of hard to remember. But I remember running across the highway and then going down into another area of the woods on the side of the highway. And I'm in the woods, and as I'm in the woods, like my perception, like my vision was just in these like snapshot frames. Like it wasn't like when I moved my head, I perceived everything in these sort of like snapshot sort of frames. And I couldn't really focus on any one thing. And I remember being in the woods naked. It was in the middle of October or end of October, and I was cold. I was freezing. And I just remember like choking on blood, and I was like, "Where's this blood coming from?" And I remember feeling like there was a hole in my lip, and because I guess my face had hit the steering wheel, my tooth went through my lip. I remember sticking my whole finger through my lip, and then just like spitting out blood all over my hands, and like then just rubbing it all over myself. Because I thought, okay, well, I must be dead right now. And being in the woods, cold, naked, is hell. And I'm dead and I'm in hell right now. And the color of hell is red, so I must make myself red. So I started spitting blood all over onto my hands and rubbing it all over myself. And then I'm like, oh, well, I gotta eat something. If I'm trying to survive, I gotta eat. So I started eating the dead leaves off of the trees, and like, and then another thing that I remember was something that crossed my mind about like yoga poses, and there was like this friend of mine like a month prior telling me about yoga poses that brought him closer to God or something like that. So I was covered in blood, naked, eating leaves, and I started doing these yoga poses in the middle of the woods, thinking that it was going to get me closer to, God or whatever I needed to do, because I was trying to get out of hell. That's all I wanted to do. So I'm like lost in the woods, and I'm like, and since my vision was in this snapshot frame sort of movement, every time I started walking closer towards the highway to go back up to the highway, the snapshot vision was making it move further and further away from me. So that's what initially made me think that I was trapped, like in the woods and in. So then I thought, okay, well, maybe if I just look down and I don't focus on what's ahead of me, but focus on like the light of like what's ahead of me, and just like kind of out of my peripheral like vision, like focus on light, and the light that I see, I can make my way back up to the highway. So after being lost in the woods for about, must have been like a half an hour, I don't know how, time, I couldn't really perceive time too much at that point because it was a very, crazy moment. But I remember focusing on light out of my peripheral vision, and that seemed to make me be able to get closer and closer to the highway. So as I finally made it up to the highway, I, out of my peripheral vision, see like police lights, and there's lights everywhere, and I had this thought that, okay, I'm about to walk up and see my own dead body, because like I'm dead right now, and I'm about to like see my dead body, So it was a second. But I thought I was about to see my dead body, and I walk up, and I'm not really sure what happened at that point, but I saw like police and ambulances, and this one policeman walked up to me, asking me all these questions, and like I wasn't in my right frame of mind to like answer any of these questions. And he's asking me what my name was. I spit out like 30 different names. He asked me what my address was. I spit out like 30 different addresses. You know, he's asking me, you know, who are you? You know, what are you doing here? Were you involved in an accident? And I just kept telling him, I'm cold. I'm cold. I need a blanket. I'm cold. I just said, I'm cold. I need a blanket. I just kept repeating that phrase. And then finally, I guess the cops like thought that they thought maybe I was high on acid or something, or thought there was something wrong with me. So we just got to get this guy in the ambulance and get him like to the hospital, because maybe he's like on meth or acid or drunk, or we don't know what's wrong with this guy. So they put me in the ambulance. And then the next thing I remember was at the time, because of my number chart, I had this long string of numbers tattooed on my back. And that's another thing that brings me to my tattoo story, which I'm going to sidetrack a little bit. But